This word in your ear is brought to you thanks to NordVPN. And VPN stands for, Mark Ellen?
Virtual Private Network. There it is.
Say it once more, Mark.
Virtual
VPN stands
Private.
For. Very good. You almost could know what Virtual Private Network means. And in case, to just jog your memory, it's a way of keeping your data safe on the internet, particularly whenever you're logging in, either at home or abroad. It protects your identity and encrypts your data so that nobody can steal your identity. At the same time, it enables you to access the internet via servers which are in more than 50 different countries. So you can choose where you want to be from today. This means you can often sidestep the region restrictions and stream movies and TV programs from all around the world. I had an example of that this week, Mark.
Well,
I took advantage of my VPN to take advantage of the fact that Operation Mincemeat is on Netflix in the United States and hadn't arrived in the UK as yet. So I watched this. Now, we know a little bit about Operation Mincemeat because you went to see a stage production,
I went to see the
same story.
Yeah, which is absolutely fantastic, actually. And it is just a brilliant idea that a story about a dead body being dressed up and supplied with papers indicating that it was actually a British soldier was found washed up off the coast of Spain. It was an incredibly complicated thing, wasn't it, to try and to get to Hitler to move troops out of Sicily and into Sardinia, and worked. And the idea of making a musical about that seems pretty unlikely, actually. Song and dance.
Well, it's one of those stories that just will not go away. You know, I first became aware of it. There was a 1957 film, I think, 1956 film called The Man Who Never Was. And it's based on a true story. It was actually, this happened in 1943. They took a dead body and they dressed it up in the uniform of an officer, and then dropped it in the sea, knowing it would wash up on the coast of Spain. It would contain orders.
With a briefcase of faked papers and letters.
Anyway, the story was revived a couple of years ago by Ben McIntyre in his book Operation Mincemeat, which I have to say is a terribly good book, as are all Ben McIntyre's books, which tend to be espionage based. And anyway, they made another film of it, this time starring Colin Firth and Kelly MacDonald and Matthew McFadden and so forth. And I was watching it, and it struck me as a classic case of when they make old stories nowadays, they kind of have to make them acceptable to modern sensibilities by putting in things that just seem really jarring to me, you know. So there we are in London in the blackout. We're in London in the blackout, you know. It's 1943. There's no indication we're going to win this war. It's pretty grim life for everybody. And suddenly you get the feeling that some producers have said, you know, this wartime thing, it's all a bit of a downer, isn't it? It's all a bit of a downer. Can we just lift the audience a little bit? So Kelly MacDonald and Colin Firth find themselves in a kind of underground club where there are suddenly loads of African-American soldiers absolutely everywhere, jitterbugging, incredibly energetically.
Yeah.
And with Kelly MacDonald joining in and so forth. And it really is as if somebody said, oh, we're in the middle of this war. Can't you have just 10 minutes of strictly come dancing?
That's right.
Or something. And you just think, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, take me back to the 1956 dreary original, actually. That's my view. So that's what got my goat in the world of online video this week. Anyway.
Is the film worth watching? Is it any good?
Oh, I got halfway through. I will probably go and complete it after this, Mark, after we talked about it. I stopped halfway through. I stopped during the jitterbug sequence because I was just cross.
Absolutely.
Anyway, if you want to join me, you can take advantage of a deal where you can try NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com/yourear, or just using the code YourEar to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 1 additional month for free and a bonus gift. And it's risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Full details in the notes below.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Well, look, I've only seen the trailers for Danny Boyle's TV miniseries Pistol, but you've seen. I wasn't wildly persuaded, but then that's very unkind to say that about a trailer. But you've seen the entire thing, haven't you? And I've seen
the first two. First two.
All right, but the first thing that struck me was how difficult it is to find actors that can convince you that they are the person, because pop stars look extraordinary, don't they? They're not conventionally handsome or beautiful.
They're slightly odd.
Yeah.
I mean, the occasional one is beautiful. Elvis Presley, was beautiful, but kind of slightly odd. You know what I mean?
Still slightly odd. Debbie Harry, really good example. Just head too big, body a strange shape. I mean, absolutely gorgeous, but unusual. If you saw her walking down the street, you wouldn't immediately think,
But also, you're asking them to impersonate somebody with whom you are spookily familiar.
Yeah,
that's the kind of challenge.
Yeah,
that the guy playing Johnny Rotten in this, you think, he just looks like any actor who was playing, in a Joe Orton play in the 1960s or something. It's kind of standard actor plays a bit of a transgressive youth.
Yeah.
It's a standard act, And the other thing that struck me about them, I'd say, it's a bit similar to watching Dunkirk, which is that contemporary actors just look too toned to play 1940s squaddies. They can't do it. You know what I mean? Those guys were different.
I know,
they had different nutrition and so forth.
Worst diet imaginable.
Absolutely.
Horrible spotty oiks,
And I felt when I was looking at the cast of Pistol and thinking, I bet you're all vegans.
Yeah.
I bet not one of you have started the day on egg and chips and a can of Lucasade or whatever. whatever was the diet of the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
So that's very difficult to do, and to get a bunch of actors who are kind of people in their early 20s nowadays to play these people who were kind of post-war generation people. And this reaches a kind of particular pitch of absurdity when you get Nick Kent, who was on the fringes of the Sex Pistols story, legendary rock journalist of the 70s. Nick Kent, played by an actor who's, I'm sorry, I don't want to draw particular attention to the name of this actor, but I feel I have to share with you the fact that part of Nick Kent is played by Ferdia Walsh-Pilo. Ferdia Walsh-Pilo. I'm sorry, that person comes from a different universe than Nick Kent comes from. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you're playing a person who also in real life played a person, which was, in the case of Nick Kent,
Keith Richards, wasn't he?
Played Keith Richards.
Absolutely. Wore his same clothes,
Tyler or
the same things. Yeah, exactly.
And, so they're playing people who are playing a role, which is just very hard to do. And the other thing is that although it's Steve Jones's story, and I've not read Steve Jones's book, and you told me Steve Jones's book is really good.
It's really good, yeah.
I'm sure it is. It still ends up being a story of a band. And if you're going to do a story of a band in a movie, there are certain things that will inevitably occur, whether your band is Cliff Richard and the Shadows or the Sex Pistols or Nirvana or whatever. The demands of film are such that there will be a scene when the characters sit round a pub table and somebody says, well, that's the music sorted out. Now what about the image? And you just think,
there's another really
no
annoying
band ever invented
There's another really annoying trait about biopics where if you introduce somebody, you've got to say who it is within about a minute, because otherwise, I haven't seen this film, but, imagine at some point, Johnny will look up and go, that's the guy who might manage us one day, Malcolm McLaren or something, you know what I mean?
I'd say it's a classic case of this. I've actually mentioned that I reviewed this for the New Statesman, so you can read my wise words on the New Statesman website or in the magazine, I'm sure. And they do this, so they either have to introduce themselves some way, or the script is going to do it for them.
Yeah.
And at one point in episode 2, I think there's a kind of party in their rehearsal space in Denmark Street, where there's the Jordan there and all the punk, faces. And suddenly this guy appears out of nowhere, large in the life, and sprays beer all over the crowd. And I'm thinking, and just as I'm thinking, is that supposed to be Billy Idol? He actually introduced himself by saying, "I come from Bromley."
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a bit of a clue there. Oh, it's so clunky, isn't it? It's terrible.
It is clunky.
But my question to you is have you been, because I've only very rarely been convinced by people playing pop stars. I thought the guy who played Rocket Man, the Rocket Man, Elton John, wasn't too bad. I thought Aaron Johnson as John Lennon in Nowhere Boy was fantastic. But best ever, Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon. You ever seen Walk the Line?
Yeah.
They were fantastic. As Johnny and June Carter. I thought they were absolutely amazing. And sang the parts themselves.
But you see, Reese Witherspoon, classic case. Reese Witherspoon, being a film star, is just, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound really ungentlemanly here.
You're going to say
slightly
she's
too good looking. No, slightly too good looking. It's like, the girl playing Chrissie Hynde in this, Sydney Chandler. I'm sorry, she's too fabulous young actress.
Yeah.
Chrissie Hynde had a really odd look.
She did.
That was what was hypnotic about her, that she didn't look like an actress.
And it's interesting that Chrissie Hynde is in that film already, because she's another bit part, isn't she? But I mean, someone whose career has subsequently taken off, so it's just a way of kind of getting people's attention.
She's in the acknowledgements. It says, "Thanks very much to Chrissie Hynde." I think there was obviously some kind of transaction about, it's all right to depict me in this film, as long as I'm, get a decent spin. But listen, I've only seen 2 episodes. And at the end of the second episode, and they're 50-minute episodes, so they're quite long. By the end of the second episode, they've just played their first show. So that gives you an idea of the fact that they're kind of holding back, because they're thinking, we're going to do 6 episodes here. 6 50-minute episodes about a group who who lasted how long? 3 years?
Yeah,
something like that in one way or another.
Yeah,
and of course, what does the film open with? And what does any film dealing with punk rock open with, whether it's a documentary or a drama?
Rats,
it has to
rubbish?
open.
No.
Well, okay, I'll come into this in a second.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Usually how they do it,
it opens with the Queen. You've got to have the Queen,
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, I wonder how long it'll be before I see the rubbish piled high in Leicester Square. There it is. There it is. Because the interesting thing about the rubbish piled high in Leicester Square is it didn't happen until 1979.
No, it's not modern documentary makers, is it? It's all part of punk rock, isn't it? Punk rock was over by then.
Well, because you can't accuse Danny Boyle of that, because he's nearer our age than the average documentary director. But the average documentary director only knows about punk rock because they've read about it somewhere. You know what I mean? So they've accepted a kind of cliched view of it. So it'll be with you soon. Well, listen, that's the way those streaming things work, isn't it? If you like it, you'll keep on watching.
Yeah.
If you don't, you'll just fall away, won't you? I'll give it points for the fact that it doesn't use all its cards at the outset, which very often films do. Very often nowadays, films give you all the highlights right at the beginning and then say, "This is what we're going to tell you." That doesn't do it. It takes a relatively unfolding view of its story, but I should be interested to hear what people think.
Yeah.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
very sad to see that Alan White had died this week. Alan White, who, I mean, I can still remember seeing Instant Karma on Top of the Pops in whatever it been, 1970, and thinking how absolutely astonishing the drumming was. The drumming, the Phil Spector sound on the original record too. And how old was Alan White, Dave, when he recorded that? With
1920, something like that, would it be?
Yeah, he was just 20 years old. Absolutely incredible. So I've been reading his obituaries. Alan White started, born in 1979, and he started as a kind of pretty much, working musician when he was 13 in a group called the Downbeats. Isn't that amazing? He was 13 years old. At the time, he kind of was also doing a paper round to kind of keep a bit more money coming in. And when he was 14, he was in a group called the Blue Chips, who appeared at the London Palladium. And when he was 17, he was working with, Alan Price and Billy Fury and stuff, and finished up in the Plastic Ono band when he was 20. I mean, that's astonishing, isn't it? So this guy who
not unusual at the time, really, was it? Because that whole generation, what you do know about that entire generation, and here we're talking about the 60s and early 70s, is none of them went to college.
No.
If they did, they went to art college for like 6 months.
Because now you've got a thing where they leave school at the age of 18, they take a year off tooling around and going to Goa and buying an elephant's hair bracelet and listening to Bob Marley's Legend album. And then they come back and then they go to university, don't they, for 3 years. And then they take another year off. So they don't actually start the band till they're probably in their early 23, 24 or something. But then these guys, by the age of 24, like George Harrison left the Beatles at the age of whatever it was, 26 or 27. It was all over.
We were talking about this only yesterday, and I don't wish to shoehorn a reference to my best-selling 4-CD compilation Deep 70s at your record shop or online now. But we were talking about, and I talked about this yesterday, an event we did at Rough Trade, and we were making the point, that out of the 71 tracks on there, the overwhelming majority of them will have been done by performers who were under the age of 25 at that point.
Because that really struck me listening to your fantastic CDs. I think I look at the effortless segue there. No, that people feel obligated now to again, it's a generalization, to write songs about issues and anxieties and things of substance. What struck me about your 70s CD compilation is so much of it is about just how wonderful life was in the 90s, just how wonderful it was to be alive. And all the opportunities and the fun and entertainment and amusement was available. And that's because all the people on that record are, as you say, about 25 years old.
Although even today, it's quite interesting. The opening track on there is Paydo by Jesse Winchester, which is about the joy of just getting your pay on a Friday. Let's go out on the town tonight. My pockets are heavy with loot. And you can't, nobody's going to do that any longer, Oh, my salary's just gone into my bank account. I'm really thrilled about it. Actually, talking about rock stars and age, I just wanted to interject on the subject of a record we were talking to Owen Parker about last week, because you were away at a wedding last week.
Yeah, I was.
Which is The Smile, which is Thom Yorke's latest kind of Radiohead spin-off project, which I've spent quite a bit of time listening to this week. Have you heard it?
I've heard a bit. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It's really, really good. But there's always a but.
Yeah.
Here's my point. It's a really good record. It sounds fabulous. It sounds, as Owen said, better than Radiohead. But here's what's odd about it to me, is it kind of sounds, it's indie, isn't it?
Yeah.
And its overall tone, if you were to characterize its tone, you might say it's kind of bleating. Yes? It's bleating, that is
an adjective you could ascribe to Radiohead on occasions too, but go on.
Well, okay. And actually I go further. It's an adjective that I would apply to pretty much all indie, all indie,
all
like
indie.
it or not. It's kind of bleating.
Middle class white rock.
The whole deal with indie is life's not fair.
Yeah,
Anyway, but here's the point. This is being made by guys in their early 50s. Yes?
Yeah.
So they are making the kind of noise which, if they had teenage children, you would be expecting the teenage children to make. These people must have teenage children, are probably older than teenage children. How do those teenage children feel about the fact that that's my dad making that sound? And it's a really good sound. I'm not knocking it in any shape or form, but it's kind of funny in the sense that it doesn't sound like the work of men in the 50s.
No.
It sounds like the work of men in their early 20s or something.
That's their idiom. And, exactly.
It's the
so
idiom.
Will their children have rebelled against that and gone off and listened to incredibly conventional things? I don't know. They might have just run in the opposite direction and been embarrassed.
I don't know. You see, I would have thought you get to a point in life where you've passed certain kind of Rubicons. You've been to a parents' evening. What I mean? You've had a conversation.
Yeah.
You've had a conversation that probably might even have included the expression, "You're not going out the house dressed like that." You've taken on certain of the responsibilities of adult life, and yet you're still making that sound.
Yeah.
It just seems there's something slightly out of kilter about it.
Adolescent noise, isn't it? Yeah.
To be fair, though, it's a really good record. It's a really good record. I highly recommend everybody listen to it. But sorry, that was just, it amused me to think of chaps in their 50s making that sound.
We also ought to mention Andy Fletcher, don't you think? Andy Fletcher.
Well, you have done. Go on.
I have. I mean, Andy Fletcher, it's really...
of Depeche Mode.
Of Depeche Mode, who died very young, 60 or whatever, And it was very interesting because no one could quite work out what he did. And it's just one of those examples where the roles that people have in groups that they evolve into are often not very kind of clearly defined and often very, very crucial, even though they don't appear to be on the surface. So Andy Fletcher didn't sing, and he was the only person who never had a songwriting credit. And he said in 1989, he said, "Martin's the songwriter, Alan's the good musician, Dave's the vocalist, and I just bum around." And then after Alan left, Rolling Stone had said, "Depeche Mode's unique division of labour has long been established, with each of the three remaining members having a distinct role. Martin Gore writes the songs, Dave Gahan sings them, and Andy Fletcher shows up for photo shoots and cashes the checks." But actually it transpired, obviously, that he was a really integral part of the setup. They describe him as the tiebreaker who brings the band together. And they didn't have a kind of official manager for a long time. And so he took on all the other kind of non-musical interests, a lot of the legal things, a lot of the business things. So he's pretty much managing that. Really interesting that you think there's this person you could, and there must be so many other examples of people who, Charlie Watts is a really obvious one, I think, the people who, they might have sort of been in the background, were probably absolutely vital to the way the group interconnected,
And I suppose it might be interesting. I mean, they've been going a long time now, haven't they? It's 40 years.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they continue now that he's no longer with us. Because I'm sure you're right that he must have been the glue in the group.
Completely.
Otherwise, why would he have been there that long?
Why would he have been there? Exactly. And he would be probably the unthreatening one who was never going to, I don't know, usurp all the song credits or just to push me out the limelight or, I don't know, steal the thunder. He was just there in the background.
But he's probably also the guy he was probably the proposer. He was probably the person who says, in any group, there's always a proposer. There's always somebody who says, "Why don't we do this?" And without the proposer, nothing moves forward at all.
Yeah.
Even if the rest of them say, "No, it's a terrible idea."
At least he suggested.
Simply by proposing, you move the thing forward.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
The Word Podcast, 2 cocoa tins and a piece of string.
The first of our birthday guests this week, Anne Camber. Hello, Anne. We see you again.
Yes, that's rather lovely to see you again. Mm-hmm.
And happy birthday. When is it?
Happy birthday.
Oh, it was Monday last week. But we were in Suffolk. We were in lovely, beautiful Suffolk, staying with my sister. So so we had lots of partying. It was good.
Good. Mm-hmm. Well, to complete your perfect birthday week, you get the opportunity to throw something into the conversation on the word podcast. And you've been thinking about making up playlists for car journeys. Tell us about this.
Well, my husband and I are inveterate playlist makers. And we've been making playlists for car journeys for years and years and years. And particularly, we've done quite a lot of long drives across the United States and in Canada. And we've always made playlists.
Does that include Chuck Berry on your playlist then?
Well, no, you see, this is the thing. We're beginning to think that there's a bit of a science or an art to it, actually. Get the perfect playlist for a car journey. Because actually, you don't necessarily play your favourite stuff. So, for instance, because I'm a massive Nick Cave fan, but Nick Cave doesn't ever make the cut.
He doesn't travel, does he?
No, he does. That would not. He's not got that kind of sense of propulsion about him, has he?
That's true. He doesn't travel. So, and there are other favourites I have that simply don't travel. So we've come to the sort of the decision that there are various things that you have to have in a song.
Go on.
In a car. Right. So first of all, it has to be a big sound, but not too big. There has to be a melody that you at least sort of recognise.
And can join in with. Yeah.
But the lyrics are absolutely immaterial. In fact, the lyrics, actually, the more they make sense, the worse it is for a car, because you don't want to get sucked into the song, the lyrics. No. You want to just repeat a load of old rubbish. So there's a lot of songs that fit that bill. And you also don't want to have something with too incessant a beat, because that can get very annoying, especially when you're sitting in a traffic jam, which you inevitably are. In fact, we were sitting in one yesterday.
That would be very frustrating, because the music suggests that you're moving.
Exactly, the music's sitting there and you're kind of getting more and more frustrated.
So give us some examples of tracks that fit those criteria.
Right, so we've, over the years, we've honed it down to the following artists. Okay.
Right, this is good.
This is good.
Yeah, that fits the bill. Now, this is obviously only for me and for my husband, and there have been disagreements as to what should make the hit. But we found the perfect companions are, in no particular order, Paul Simon.
Oh, right, good. Yes. I can see that completely.
With you, completely.
Yeah.
Songs like America. Yeah.
Yeah. Fleetwood Mac.
No, I can see that too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Jackson Browne.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mary Chapin Carpenter.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay, who fits the bill? Rufus Wainwright.
Gosh.
Controversial.
It's a rich diet, isn't it, Rufus Wainwright? More than one.
Well, he's got some quite big sounding songs that you can sing along to.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the lyrics. One thing you cannot have is a song that makes you cry. Because that's disastrous.
It's dangerous. Dangerous. Sobbing at the wheel.
I know. Well, my husband doesn't drive, you see, so I do all the driving.
Right.
And I cannot have a song where I'm going to start weeping. So
I think Paul Simon's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah,
because
it really works.
There's just a kind of lightness about Paul Simon, and but no, I can't think of a single Paul Simon song that doesn't work. Actually,
no,
in a car.
So I tell you, our absolute number one top band.
Go on.
Steely Dan.
Yes. I can see that completely.
Yes,
absolutely perfect.
There is no playlist that does not have at least 3 or 4 Steely Dan.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Because it's got the right amount of beat, it's got the right sort of. The lyrics are absolute rubbish, so you don't.
Nobody knows what it means.
No one understands them anyway.
So it doesn't matter. You can just sing along. But there's a propulsion to them, and they also just cheer you up.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna throw in just one. It's not a spanner in the works at all, but just an observation based on. I was travelling yesterday evening, coming back from something, not by car, but on the tube, and we'd had Mark and I had a couple of drinks, hadn't we? We went together. He was going. But I got on the tube, and it was quiet on the tube because everybody had gone home to watch the football. And so I put on my iPhone, and I just put some music on, and I just let whatever it wanted to play me, and it played me a record I've heard for ages. And I'm holding it up here. It's Tricky, Angels with Dirty Faces.
Tricky, gosh,
and it sounded absolutely fantastic in those circumstances.
That's good.
On a tube train. On a Saturday evening, having had a couple of pints, absolutely, it sounded all the way home. It sounded as if it was built for listening to on the tube. And I've just played it prior to this chat, and it doesn't sound as good.
No,
it's a combination.
That's like buying wine abroad and then bringing it home, and it tastes different when you get back.
Yeah. I just think there's some music that just sounds right in a certain place and then doesn't sound right somewhere else.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because the thing that matters with music is not the music; it's your state of mind.
Exactly.
It's being sufficiently receptive. Therefore, in the state of mind of traveling with your husband, you are receptive towards those particular artists, and also. There is a degree of accord between the two of you.
Yeah.
Neither of you are playing anything that's likely to get the go to the other person. Because if you were, neither of you will enjoy it at all.
Exactly. So there has been an element of negotiation over the years.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant.
But harmony reigns in the car when Steely Dan and Fleetwood Mac.
Once Steely Dan comes on. Yeah, some of my choices are rejected.
ZZ Top are good too, I think. And also, I think River Deep Mountain High is a song for some reason.
Well, actually, there's Motown. Motown is probably another good one that we haven't really quite explored yet, but I think there's probably some rich gold in Motown.
Yeah.
There certainly is.
Travelling in for car.
Well, look, let us know next birthday. You'll have to try Motown sometime in the next year, and come back and let us know how it went. But happy birthday to you of this week. All the very best.
Thanks, Anne.
The Word Podcast. Clearly, there is no plan.
And our next Patreon supporter celebrating his birthday this week is Paul Thompson. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Paul.
Good afternoon.
When did it take place? When was the great day?
It was on Friday. So,
were there great festivities? Were
the fireworks let off?
There were fantastic festivities. Yes, yeah.
Oh, were they good? Like what?
Oh, very.
I travelled. We actually went into town, out for dinner, and then.
Good grief!
There's a Jarvis Cocker Day. Actually, you might have noticed he's got a book out.
Yes.
And he had an exhibition down Chiltern Street, and a big talk thing he did at Royal Festival Hall. With Miranda Sawyer.
Oh, right. Yeah. Miranda Sawyer. I read about that on Twitter, actually. Yeah. It sounded really good.
It was good. This is the next level of talking about your book at Royal Festival Hall, and
that's one up on your little tent at the literary festival, isn't it? Good for him. Well, he's very good. He's very good, and it's an amazing story. It's great.
So, Paul, what's been getting your goat? So, what do you think we should talk about?
I've been noticing over the last year or so this tendency to, when you get involved in criticising popular music, to relate it back to classical music, which I just don't understand why this is done, what I'm supposed to get out of it, and how it's supposed to relate back to anything that pop musicians do. So I think it's trying to bring some sort of respectability to the whole thing, I think.
Gravitas.
That's a good word.
Gravitas.
Have you ever seen Howard Goodall? Have you ever seen Howard Goodall's programs?
I don't recognise.
Oh, it's brilliant. He's done a lot about the Beatles. But I mean, he's done a thing. I saw a thing he did where he was saying that the chord sequences of, Yesterday and Eleanor Rigby and She's Leaving Home and I Love Her echoed the cadences of 14th century hymns. You think that's really interesting. And I've never noticed that before. But clearly it wasn't a conscious thing on the part of the Beatles. It's just the fact that they've absorbed a lot of chords. Exactly.
It's a coincidence. Yeah. And what are we supposed to get out of that? I don't.
Well, I suppose I'm guessing here, we're supposed to feel flattered that they've noticed us, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because here's your problem: if you're your kind of serious academic scholar, or a classical musician or whatever, what's the thing that vexes you every morning when you get out of bed? It's the fact that the world doesn't seem to be bothered about what you have to say about anything. Therefore, the way you get the world's attention is taking your lens and applying it to something that the world is interested in, and therefore telling them what they ought to think about, Lady Gaga or Paul McCartney or whatever. Yeah. That's how they do it. And I always think the same thing after hearing these things, like, so what? Because I've got a strong feeling that classical musicians, great as they are, don't begin to understand pop music. Just don't get it. And it's quite interesting that the thing I've been working on recently, and it really made me think that when Pink Floyd met Yehudi Menuhin, there was some kind of meeting at Abbey Road or something. I can't remember how it actually started. And they wanted Yehudi Menuhin to just play a little bit on one of their records, just so they could say they had Yehudi Menuhin on it. And he was honest enough to say he literally couldn't begin to play even 5 notes without having them written out for him on a stave. Yeah. And that was such a reminder of what a fundamentally different tradition it is, you know what I mean? That he just couldn't begin to do it. And on the other hand, when Paul McCartney, when they were doing Penny Lane and they got, and he famously, late in the day, he heard David Mason playing the piccolo trumpet on Vivaldi's Four Seasons on the television and said to George Martin, I'd like that sound on our record. And so George Martin said, well, I know David Mason, I'll just call him. Got David Mason in. They selected the instrument he was going to play. George Martin wrote it out, very demanding piece, even if you're a remarkable player. And David Mason did it perfectly first time. And then Paul McCartney said, hit the talkback and said, it's really good. Why don't you give it another pass?
Let's take another take. That's right, yeah. Didn't he say, I'm not capable of doing it because I've worn out my lip?
It had to be explained to him that you cannot do that again. You know what I mean? It's a physical act. It's an act of enormous discipline. It's not like getting in the groove. It's not like we've hardly met, And that's another reminder of just what vastly different worlds these two things are. Don't you think, Mark?
I absolutely, totally agree. I mean, to be boring about it, pretty much all Western pop music is in the pentatonic scale. Are you a musician or not, Paul?
I have been in the past.
Well, pentatonic scale is just a series of notes that just happen to chime, and the classical music is not in that scale at all. Yeah. It's got all sorts of sharps and flats that no pop musician would ever play. So they are two. What's the word? Not incompatible, but they're not integratable languages, really.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
So next time is...
I was going to say it's not classical music, but I would suggest if you want analysis or deconstruction of songs, look out for a guy called Rodri Marsden on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
absolutely amazing. He's not really classical, but he did one the other day where he was talking about the descending bass chord, the particular chord sequence, pointing out that it was the same chord sequence for the Wombles, the Wombling song as Paranoid Android by Radiohead, 3 lines on the shirt, My Baby Just Cares for Me by Nina Simone, and Piano Man by Billy Joel. They're all effectively the same song. See, I think that kind of thing is really useful.
Very interesting.
Those songs again, you think, actually, I can now sing 3 lines on the shirt to this. Really interesting.
Yeah. So next time you're bothered by somebody on the radio, some classical boffin going on about popular music, ring them up and say, why don't you get Rodri Marsden on? Rodri is the guy who talks sense. And you get my vote as well. Well, look, thanks very much for joining us. And I hope we've put the cherry on the Knickerbocker glory of your birthday week.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
The Word Podcast. Fix yourself a drink and it's like being in the pub.
Go on.
Ray Roscoe, Ray, another birthday patron. How lovely to see you. And your birthday is shared with who? A wide variety.
A number of people, but in the music world, it's Susie Sue and Cilla Black. So nice, good female icons. Very contrasting.
That's good.
Can you see me, by the way?
We can.
Yeah.
Right,
go on, carry on.
And then in where are we? In the world of cooking, I've got Jamie Oliver and Heston Blumenthal.
Fantastic.
And schlock horror movies from the 60s, Christopher Lee and Vincent Price. Amazing.
Very good.
I can add more. John Conte, the former headmaster of Eton. I've got the lot. They're all people. I don't know what happened 9 months before me, but there you go.
There you go.
What do you do on your birthday?
So what?
Yes. Well, what did I do on my birthday? Right. I'm retired now, so I did a tour. I'm a volunteer tour guide at the National Trust, so I go there once a week, usually a Friday. At Sutton House. Do you know Sutton House? It's a Tudor building in Hackney. I live in Hackney, and
right.
The oldest home in Hackney, or the oldest home in East London. So
fantastic.
So I do that, and I usually try and shoehorn a music reference in whilst I'm going round there. Usually
is it often noticed by your
I sometimes get flying smiles.
Give us an example of the kind of thing you say.
The building at Sutton House was named after Thomas Sutton, who founded Charterhouse School.
Yeah.
Which is where all of Genesis met, apart from Phil Collins, of course.
Yeah.
And I look around and said, does anyone know what band members what band formed at Charterhouse School? Usually sea of blank faces. But, I try my best.
Absolutely. You got
and then the other one, even more obscure, is the guy who built the house, Ralph Sadler. His wife was called Helen Barr. She was married before. She was married to Martin Barr. Not the Jethro Tull guitarist.
This is top quality material.
There you go.
So, what was it? Is there anything you'd like to raise while you got this opportunity?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about your. I know you're in the middle of promoting your collection, David. Your deep 70s.
Oh, absolutely. How kind of you to mention it.
Yeah. Oh, well, only too happy to, because I've been listening to it a lot and discovering a lot. Because the 70s they're my formative years. I was 10 in 1970 and 19 when it ended. So or 20.
Right.
And so there's a lot that I missed. Right. I mean, I would it'd just be too young, or you wouldn't be able to hear it anywhere. And things that stood out for me were Andy Pratt, who I didn't know. The Wendy Wold, is it Waldman?
Wendy Waldman, yes.
Mad Me, and actually listening to it, because I went sort of back to my 70s mode and thinking. There was a mystique about stuff because you didn't know anything. You couldn't find out about them. You couldn't read about them. You couldn't hear them on the radio. So you'd pore over the sleeve or the inner notes or anything for information. And I thought, I like to leave it like that. I like to leave it with Wendy Waldman as someone who's got mystique. I don't know anything about her, and I'm not sure I want to go down a rabbit hole for 5 hours to find out.
That's really good. So you've not Googled her or anything like that. You just think,
I was tempted, and I thought, I don't want to.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I might listen to more of her music, but I don't want to know any more about her.
Would you like to? Would you like to know a piece of information about Andy Pratt?
Please.
Okay, and I'm just going to have to look this up to remind myself while you're there.
Yeah,
because Andy Pratt, that's from his very early record, about 1972 or something like that. He has since made. I'm just looking at a whole page on Wikipedia. He must have made another 30 albums since.
You're joking.
It can't be many fewer. You know what I mean?
Wow.
The most recent one came out in 2015 on Continental Records called "Do You Remember Me?" And I haven't. I've got his first few, and but it's like everybody, they all keep going.
They do all
just
keep
keep going. And the tragic truth is in 99% of the cases, the best stuff is the first stuff.
Yeah.
It's very rare that it isn't that way. You know what I mean? So if you did want to satisfy your curiosity about Andy Pratt, there's lots to go on. Don't worry about that.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough.
It's funny you should say that.
Filter it out for me, David. That's what I need. I need someone to.
Well, no, it's fine. No, because we were talking about that, Mark and I, when we were doing this thing about it yesterday in a record shop. Is that there are 71 tracks on those 4 CDs, and pretty much all of them I discovered in a record shop.
Right.
I didn't discover them on the radio. Didn't discover them through reading about them. No. You might have read about them later. You discovered them because you just walked in and you looked in the new releases, and there was that thing that looked interesting.
Well, a lot of them would never been played on the radio, would they? I guess.
No.
Yeah.
And if they had been, you wouldn't have been listening.
No, absolutely.
So
I'm also, I have to say, there are 2 tracks on there that I would say definitely 1, probably 2 that would be contenders for the greatest record ever made.
Oh, go on, which?
Go on.
Hammond Song by the Roaches.
I think so too. Oh my God, that's pretty much my favourite. The harmonies on that. Right?
Oh, it's beautiful because it's beautifully done, and the guitar work, the vocals, fantastic, and it's both poignant and sad and funny.
It is.
And I think, how do you get all that into 5 minutes? Yeah. It's gorgeous. And
do you know who produced?
It fades in, which is beautiful. Beautiful.
Do you know who produced that?
Was that Robert Fripp or?
It's Robert Fripp.
Yeah.
He's on the guitar. A really unlikely thing for Robert Fripp to have done.
I know.
He did it.
I know. It's that one I did know. I bought that when it came out, so I do know that one.
All right, okay.
So that wasn't new to me, but it was good to see it on there. And the second one would be Roy Harper's, and that's not new to me.
There you go.
This is a great track.
Yeah.
Which I've now moved my recommendation of Roy Harper's "When an Elk Cricketer Leaves the Crease" up a gear, in that I now say it's the greatest record about sport ever. And if anybody can think of a better one, well, that's Fighting Talk.
Right. So it's not you also want of Roy Harper particularly either.
No,
the other stuff he does is
it's very charming.
It's just charming and sweet.
No, it's good. No, it's very good.
You also mentioned out in your email Alan White. We were talking about Alan White earlier, and you were wondering if Yes are on tour without a single original member. Yes. And does that still qualify as the band? Can you say that you're going to go and see Yes? You think the minimum is they should have a singer?
Well, whoever the front man is, it's got to be the front man. He, really, has got to be the minimum. And John Anderson, I think, they even went to a fair. I don't think they do now, but they actually had the lead singer was the guy from the tribute band, wasn't it, for a while?
Oh, yeah. I think they're not the only group who've done that. Didn't Genesis do that briefly? Didn't Marillion do that?
Yeah, Genesis.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't.
You see, I think it's. I'm gonna. Here's my response to your very interesting question.
Yeah.
You couldn't go and see the Rolling Stones without Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. You just couldn't. It wouldn't work. But with a group like Yes, you kind of could, as long as they sounded good. You'd kind of forgive the fact that wasn't John Anderson there, and it wasn't. I would. That's the way I would feel about it.
Maybe. It's difficult to know. I mean, they're not. I mean, they're playing the Royal Albert Hall in a couple of weeks. The cheapest ticket is something like £70-odd. I don't know about that.
Well, I don't think they can't still be doing it.
I find it.
If Alan White's dead, how are they going to get a drummer?
No. They already had he was ill before. Which he went to.
Really?
We got the guy who normally filled in for him and did a couple of times. We'd been ill before, I guess.
Because the press release said he was looking forward to appearing with them. So maybe he was going to do a number or something.
Oh yeah, no, I've forgotten who's the guy who sits in for him. He's done it before anyway. I think they're still. Well, maybe they might all have changed their minds now that they're all could be very distressing for them, I guess. Or they might think the show must go on. It'll be interesting.
But they might well think, how many opportunities do we get?
Is there an example of any group? It's a really interesting thought that without the original vocalist, who's still somehow been convincing. I can't imagine that there is.
No. I mean, Queen tried it. And obviously, that was a
disaster. That's right. I know. Undertones. I'm trying to think.
The Dr. Feelgood, did they try without Lee Brio? I mean, that would have been. Can't remember.
We were talking about Dr. Feelgood only last night, and Dr. Feelgood are currently still playing, but without a single original member. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
God.
Not one.
Oh dear.
Somehow legally.
Well, if anybody.
Feelgood.
So, if anybody's got anything they care to add to that conversation, get in touch and leave your comments below. So, Ray, it's been lovely talking to you,
and
I hope this has proved a suitable climax to your week of birthday festivities.
Yes, been very good, very good.
Well,
when is Volume 2 coming out of your deep?
Well, it's really funny. I was talking to them about it last night, and I've started doing a list this morning. It's terrible. If somebody tells you at a pub, why don't you do another compilation album? It's a male vanity kicks in and you go up and think, yeah, I can do that. So I've got 3 CDs worked out already.
Well, you must have had a long list to edit it down. So let's have the long list.
No, not wildly, because we always it always had a bit of a focus. So there were a few we couldn't get, and which we may be able to get next time. We shall see.
Oh,
but I'm very glad you like it.
You're listening to the Word Podcast, where the time is whenever you want it to be.
So he's back from the briny, ladies and gentlemen. Alex Gold is once more come ashore with his kit bag over his shoulder, his guitar over the other shoulder. He's back from the wilds of Alaska.
I am, yes.
What sea have you been sailing, Alex, up there? Which sea is it? What's it called?
I think it's
in the North Pacific.
Yeah, it's nudging on the Pacific Ocean, that's for sure. Although there are various smaller seas with it, because there are loads of little inlets. That whole coastline is kind of it's a bunch of small islands, essentially. So you're constantly nudging a tiny little sea which you've never heard of before.
Anyway, you're back. You're back. Have you got your sea legs back? You got at Heathrow this morning. Are you still feeling the rolling of the deck under your feet, or are you?
I'm not, but I'm feeling like when I do go to sleep, because you never really sleep on the red eye. When I do go to sleep, it's going to be the greatest sleep anybody's ever enjoyed ever. But the first thing I heard after I got off was that the next batch of Beatles that are meant to get on, they got turned away at the gate because there's some kind of weird visa change that's happened. So these guys flew from Buenos Aires to Seattle via, I think, 3 flights and got turned away at the gangway.
Turned away?
Yep.
Oh, dear.
So will you feel tonight at 8 o'clock tonight, will you just feel this, you should be kind of getting your wig on and getting your John Lennon voice organised, and will you kind of just, are you programmed to go out there now?
No, the way I'm feeling right now is I never want to hear 8 days a week ever again. But I'm sure that will change in due course. I'm really happy to be back and just have something approaching a normal life for a little bit.
Right. Well, so here you are. And we ought to just remind people some of the things that we've done recently.
Yes.
Word in Your Attic and Word in Your Ear continues. It's remorseless schedule of activity.
And we should plug particularly John Houghton.
Yeah,
this guy John Houghton, old pal. Yeah.
Yeah. People probably may not know John Houghton unless you're a reader of Kerrang back in the day. I think it's fair enough to say that. And unless you're a follower of cricket nowadays. So I think it's fair to say those are the 2 poles of his expertise, aren't they, really? And in the course of this chat, he brought together those 2 poles.
Brilliant. Oh, my God. There's a lovely bit where he talks about the similarities between cricket and Spinal Tap, and he said both were very poignant because they're about the gap between ambition and achievement. That was so well put, and really amazing about cricket, talking about how cricket how it drags on the soul and how it exposes people, because it's a very individual pursuit, isn't it? You could be in a football team and people can say you had a good, bad or indifferent game, but in cricket you're being assessed, aren't you? on the number, the tally of runs you make, and you can put you can exactly quantify, to calibrate your performance. You were saying how kind of it really penetrated people's souls, the whole thing. Really, I thought it was brilliant, actually.
Honestly, you may not have listened to it. You may even have thought, I don't know who that guy is. I'm not going to watch that. In which case, you're really missing out, because it's one of the most interesting ones that we've done. We also talked to Mike Kaufman, again, a person you may not know. And Mike, amongst many other things, TV producer and music TV producer over a long period of time. But he's also on the selection panel for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, I'm sorry, he's really interesting. You know, about the whole kind of jury procedure and how you have to propose people, and you know, and how people get through or they don't get through. He's the one UK representative, isn't he? On that?
He is, yeah.
And so there's two things
required.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two things that you really ought to catch up with. What else we got to talk about? We've got Word in Your Park coming up on June the 18th, which is, of course, Paul McCartney's 80th birthday. And
5 fantastic speakers. We've got Danny Baker.
Go through them.
We've got Danny Baker. We've got Graham Gouldman of 10cc talking about, you know, the quality of his songwriting. We've got Julia Rayside. We've got Jeff Lloyd and Andy Miller. Is that right? Yeah, that's the 5.
Andy Miller and you and me and Alex will be there as well.
I will. Yeah.
And the sun is going to shine. The bars are going to be open. It's going to be an absolutely splendid time. Will be guaranteed for all. And you know, in line with, it follows our ancient policy of starting early and finishing early. So it'll start up at 2:00 in the afternoon. All be done and dusted, D&D, by 5:00. So you could be looking at the inside of your lids by 8 if that's what you want.
Stay in your deck chair, couldn't you, in the park? Dappled sunlight.
You could go out for dinner, you know, you could go to the theatre. And don't forget, it's also a record store day, I think, isn't it? Yes, it is.
It is.
It's record store day. It's also the day before Father's Day. Yes? So, you know, if you, I don't know, if you are a father or there's a father you want to buy a present for, it could be an opportunity, you know, come into town and so forth. So, please be there. If you haven't got tickets already, follow the link below and you can find out how you can get them. What else have we got to talk about, Alex? Patreon supporters?
Yes, we've got some new Patreon supporters to welcome, and they are Stephen Donnelly.
Stephen, welcome.
Hello, Stephen.
Duncan Knapp.
Splendid.
Duncan Knapp.
Very nice.
Very good.
Rachel Bealey.
Hurrah.
Hello, Rachel.
We also have some annual patrons. Now, if you subscribe annually, you get 15% off your yearly subscription. And they are Darren J. Chamberlain.
Very good. Welcome.
Hello, Darren.
John Mercer.
Excellent.
Hello, John.
Marie Griffiths.
Pull up a chair, Marie.
Welcome, Marie.
Jim Hirons.
Sounds like a song. That does.
Come on down.
Marie,
it does.
Sorry, Jim.
Jim Hirons.
Hello, Jim.
And we also have some new birthday tier subscribers. Of course, if you subscribe to the birthday tier, you get the great pleasure of having Mark and Dave digitally come round to your house.
Come round and look through your records. Very good fun.
And they are Eric Alper.
Excellent. Hello, Eric.
Hello, Eric.
And Richard Lewis.
Hello, Richard.
Well, we shall see you shortly.
Look forward to seeing them in due course.
Your birthday is.
What else we got to talk about? I was just what got my goat this week. It struck me how fed up I am of seeing journalists posting selfies of them with the people they interview.
Well, I used to be livid about that when we were editing magazines because it would give away the fact that you got an interview with Brian Ferry, which wasn't going to be coming out for 2 weeks or whatever, But no, but it also destroys the idea that it's meant to be a kind of sober professional, business exchange, isn't it? And you ask questions and they provide answers. No, the truth is that everyone's admitting that they are just overcome with excitement about being in the presence.
It's like, I've talked to so-and-so this week and they're just brilliant. They're just fabulous. And they're really kind to animals and absolutely everything.
Yeah.
There's no reserve left any longer, It's just... I don't know, maybe has social media killed journalism in that sense? I think it may well have done.
Well, I mean, to the extent that, journalists always try and pretend that they're not overawed. And it's very hard not to be overawed, don't you think? I was overawed. I can remember being overawed by even being in the presence of people like the Damned because I'd seen them on stage. I remember interviewing all the Clash for a TV interview, interviewing all four of the Clash. And just thinking, it's just too much. I've had several years of just seeing these people together in a variety of images, and here they are coming to life. They've got such an advantage over you. And also that wonderful way that you have this desperate thing inside you where you can't help it. You want people to quite like you, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You do.
Definitely.
I can remember interviewing Robert Plant and thinking, oh, God, I like Robert Plant, And he used that brilliant ruse that so many rock stars use, because at the end he said, we get on pretty well. I tell you what we ought to do one of these days. We should go out for a drink. Maybe in about, a month or 6 weeks' time when I'm back in town. Of course, a month or 6 weeks' time, the piece that you've done will be out. So you will be massively compromising your chance of having a pint with Robert Plant if you write anything remotely controversial. So that old ruse, I know.
Yeah. It's funny, have you, Bruce Springsteen does all these meet and greets nowadays. And so, there's millions of pictures of Bruce Springsteen with different individuals. And Bruce Springsteen's always got the same expression. He's Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And then the person next to him are always just looking flushed and embarrassed.
Yes.
And absolutely thrilled.
Wide-eyed. I know.
And it's an extraordinary contrast.
Yeah.
And you see it done again and again and again. That's just the way it is, I suppose.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.